Where I Buy My Model Engineering Supplies Part 3, Paint and Other Bits and Pieces. Most of the paint that I use for painting the models that I build and renovate, I buy from Blackgates Engineering, and this clip shows the shelf where the paint is kept. They usually have a good stock and the shelves are replenished frequently. This is the Blackgates Engineering shop counter. I buy things like this on a regular basis: rivets, stainless steel balls and Loctite products, as well as a multitude of other bits and pieces which are generally required all of the time if you're into model engineering. You can even buy ready-made boiler bushers. On the right hand side of this clip there are lots of them. This is a Clarkson steam engine and it's one of the shop demo models. You can see the catalogues in the foreground. You can download these. In this clip I was working on a really old vintage model boat, and the wood was very badly split and cracked. So I repaired it all using something called Weld that I'll show you very shortly, and then I skinned it using car body filler, and here I'm rubbing it down ready for painting. You can buy car body filler from any automotive outlet or from eBay or Amazon. Here's a tin of Phoenix Precision Paints Buffer Beam Red, and this is what I'm going to paint the hull with. The problem is it's not the right colour, so I've quickly unpainted it, and here I'm going to add a very small amount of black, and the black paint I'm using is Hmg Gloss Black. I get this usually via eBay. Time for a colour match test, I think. And this is quite close, but in the end it was Phoenix Precision Paints Buffer Beam Red with a little bit of Crimson Lake added and some Hmg Black. This is a really good match. I was pleased with it. Carefully and slowly I painted the entire red part of the hull without a drip in sight. This remarkable material is Weld. It's a 2-pack epoxy resin, and I use it very frequently for bonding wood and metal. This, by the way, is the 24-hour version, and I usually buy it via eBay. This is a tin of panel wipe, primarily used for removing particles from a surface that's about to be painted. I buy this from a company called Autopaint Northern. The address is on screen. As far as I'm aware, this panel wipe stuff is naphtha. It's worth mentioning that some of these companies cannot post things like this abroad, so you need to source it in your own country. This is a can of Etching Primer, and this stuff is really good. I also buy this from Autopaint Northern. I've tried quite a few etching primers, and this one appears to be one of the better ones. After I painted the boiler barrel and the smoke box of my Sterling single, this clip shows me rubbing it down with some very fine wet to dry sandpaper, and I'm using it wet. After doing this, I left the job for a while so the water could evaporate, and here I'm using a paintbrush and some panel wipe to remove any particles left behind. I painted the smoke box with the same etching primer. Etching primer doesn't really stick very well to brass and gunmetal, but this stuff seems to be the exception to the rule. It sticks very well. This is my favourite paint for steam locomotives. It's Hmg Paints Black Satin, and it's perfect. It seems to spray very well onto the parts, and as it's drying it levels out. It's also quite heat resistant, and by the way, it is a synthetic enamel. It's not a cellulose paint. Often when I use this paint, I spray some of the contents of the can into the cap, and then I can brush paint it on as well. Don't forget to wear a spray mask when you spray paint. It looks nice and shiny, but 24 hours later it looks like this. The formulation of this paint is nearer to matte than it is to gloss, and it's just right for steam locomotives. And it always seems to give a good finish. These are some parts from the tender of my 5-inch gauge LBSC Lion locomotive. The tender was chipped and I started to paint it. I was originally going to just repair the paint chips, but in the end I painted the entire top part of the tender, and it looks great now. Back onto the Sterling single, I'm spraying the barrel, and I'm using some Phoenix Precision Paints Great Northern Railway Green, but it's in an aerosol, and it was put into an aerosol by the company Autopaint Northern. Then I went online and found out that the company, Phoenix Paints, also supplied paint in aerosols. The only problem though was they weren't prepared to supply me with a small amount. I had to buy about 10 cans of this stuff. But it will be worth it in the end because I still have the tender to paint, and that's quite big. Quite a few viewers asked me where I bought my mahogany from. I used to buy it from model shops, but one by one the model shops appeared to shut, so now I buy it via eBay. These days I don't use quite as much of it as I once did. There was a time, quite a while ago, when I used to build model steamboats for customers, and in those days not only did I use the mahogany to clad the boilers, I used the mahogany for planking the decks and most of the boat apart from the hull itself. The adhesive that I used to use all the time for this job was medium viscosity cyanoacrylate adhesive, also known as superglue. And in case you're wondering which type of varnish I use, this is Ronseal Hard Glaze, but it's not the water-based stuff, it's the oil-based polyurethane varnish, and it's a very strong, tough finish. And that's it for part 3. I'd just like to say, as always, stay healthy, thanks for watching, and I hope you found it useful. Please take the time to visit my Mainsteam Models website. Click on the section of the website that says Video Playlists. And by doing that, you will find it very easy to find other videos that you may like to watch.